diaphragm.
This shapes something like a pear, with a large part of the pear at the bottom. For singing, air is inhaled deep into this large part of the lungs. The lungs are surrounded by the pleural sac, which connects the lungs to the surrounding attachments. The lungs are not muscles, but organs composed of soft, elastic tissue, and therefore they cannot expand by themselves. They must be expanded by their surrounding attachments, by the ribs, which fit snugly around the sides, front, and back, and expand the lungs outward, and by the diaphragm, which fits snugly against the bottom and expands the lungs downward.
Just before we go forward, I want you to realize it's a very important thing that you should know, the function of the muscle. The muscle has only one thing. Muscle contracts. If we use like muscle that only contracts, it's a very simple movement. It's one directional movement. The way I'm able to move my hand like this is because there's multiple muscles functioning and creating the movement. One is pushing forward, one is kind of slowing down, and that's why I can control my hand. Why I'm saying that, you understand. When they talk about diaphragm here, they say it is a muscle, and it is a muscle. But the diaphragm, like commonly thought, and I've heard this even from the many very celebrated teachers, the main role of the diaphragm is to support. But in fact, diaphragm does not support the voice. We have to understand. And you will see from this video, and logically understand why it cannot support, because I explained that the movement of the muscle is unidirectional. It only contracts. So we continue.
Together, expanding the lungs downward and outward in all directions, creating a partial vacuum in the lungs that causes air to flow in. Now, let's look at the diaphragm, a large muscle that controls the movement at the bottom of the lungs. The shape of the diaphragm can be compared to the shape of a bowl, except it's like an upside-down bowl and tilted backward, and shaped more like an amoeba or a double dome, and has a tail at the back that attaches to the lumbar spine. The tail is composed of two tendons called the pillars of the diaphragm. The diaphragm fans outward to attach to the ribs on the side, to the sternum, which is the breastbone in front, and, as we have said, to the spine in back. The diaphragm, located in the middle of the body, completely separates the thorax from the abdomen. By tilting the diaphragm backwards, we can see up into the high arched part of the bowl, where the central tendon is located. But in singing, we need to expand the ribs much more, and then to keep them expanded as singing begins. The external intercostals must remain contracted so the ribs stay out, suspended in an open position, and only gradually relax toward the end of singing.
That part that they say about intercostal muscles, right? Basically, intercostal muscles are the balancer of the breath because they control the diaphragm and the airflow. But it's not a natural movement. Sometimes we hear from the teachers, they say, breathe naturally, and it's fine. Sometimes it works, right? But when we talk about classical singing, it's probably not really applicable because it's not natural at all how we do it in classical music. But what we mean by natural breathing is probably just relax and just don't think too much. Why do we need to control diaphragm with those muscles? I'll try to inhale and just breathe naturally. Right? What happens? When you inhale, what happens is the diaphragm contracts, so it sucks the air from the lungs. Lungs are like sponges, so it sucks the air. And when we exhale, naturally, we just relax. We don't need any muscles to do. When we sing, we cannot do that. We can experiment. We just relax. It's not enough air even to not only classical singing, but to any other type of singing. We need more energy and more balance with the support, right? If you're interested, we can go forward before you get bored.
If singers collapse the rib cage when they begin a phrase, then the lungs will lose air too quickly and there won't be enough control for singing. By keeping an open rib cage during singing, exhalation can be efficiently controlled by the diaphragm and abdominal muscles at the bottom of the lungs, as we will soon show you. But first, let us take a look at the structure of the abdominal muscles.
If you have any questions concerning breath, support, diaphragm, you can go on. Sure. Yeah.
Most of the time that we sing, we don't wear a corseted uniform or costume.
Okay, yes.
But when we're on stage, I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but in my days they were.
Yes.
The costumes were made with the corset.
That was the question?
Yeah, that was the question.
Yes.
How do you make sure that you're
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Well, that's a very good question, because actually this is Jerome Heights, one of the greatest bassists in the history of the United States, and also holds degree in organic chemistry and mathematics. Great, right? And he wrote a book. It's a very interesting book. If you can get it, maybe it's in the library. I bought it in New York, and it examines these controversies, interesting controversies. Like you said, the corsets. I'll give you an interesting view of this, since he's a man and might not know too much about the women. Marilyn Horne. Do you know Marilyn Horne? No. Shame on you. Anyways, mezzo-soprano, even contralto, they call it a very famous soprano, sang Metropolitan, amazing. She had actually a masterclass here a couple of years ago. Anyways, what she says, and this is going to shock you, because she says 75% of most famous singers, she's not talking about students, conservatory, most famous singers, especially sopranos, their tongue wag and wobble all over the place because they don't get the tongue down when they go up high. It's a lack of support. Now I'm going to answer your question. That's Marilyn Horne talking about famous sopranos singing in Metropolitan Opera. So you see, even very professional singers, they face this problem. I mean, Marilyn Horne thinks that 75% of professional singers who have careers, she talks about sopranos, don't support their voice properly because their tongue wobble or whatever happens, okay? Jerome Heights actually takes this on issue that most of sopranos don't know how to support their voice. The excuse was the use of corsets. Because all the women used corsets before, and it was tradition, so they really can't do whatever, as you suggest, to expand the definitely any change of position and posture could affect your vocal technique.